Hi, thanks for joining. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. It was really exciting to kick off with Izzy's poem, as always, with the festive tech calendar. And that's kind of why I'm here today. I'm Amy Colyer, Senior Cloud Advocate at Microsoft. And I've always enjoyed watching the tech calendar and the love and the information shared. So I decided to be a part of it. So I hope I can help you out this time. I'm going to be talking a little more about what I talked about at Ignite. It's migrating your web apps to containers. And with I have a background mostly in infrastructure, so why am I playing with containers and Kubernetes? But you'll see why. It's actually not too bad, and if I can do it, so can you. Our journey starts in the Azure portal, where you can see Azure Migrate or search for it among the common services. If you select it, you will also see there is an Explore More Scenarios option, and that is where we can get the standalone migration tool. So in preview is the web app containerization. You click on that, and then you can download PowerShell scripts that help you set up everything you need to run Azure Migrate on a Windows 2019 VM is what I used. So I'll show you that shortly. But yeah, it's really easy to download the scripts and get going to migrate your web apps over. PowerShell scripts have been run. We set up Azure Migrate. It's actually called App Containerization Helper. I can never say that. But here we go and pick our application type, ASP.NET Web Apps, and our target Azure service, AKS. Containers on Kubernetes. Here are the prerequisites. It's in preview, so we have no promises. Connect to the internet, latest updates, Microsoft Web Deploy, and then really important part is enabling PowerShell remoting so we can run the commands to migrate. We're going to select our Azure tenant and Azure subscription once we're validated. And then here we get to the server IP or FQDN. I'm just using a local admin account and typing my industrious password here. Validating just to make sure we can connect and continue. And this is where we're going to discover those apps if they are running on the server. And here we have default website and North Pole. Wow, who would have thunk? So target container, I'm going to pick Santa. You can see my previous attempts. It's okay if you don't get this in the first try, but it is simple once you get used to it. So we go to name the container. And then I already built an Azure Container Registry for my image, Festivus for Seinfeld fans. And then we're going to review the Docker file. There is an issue with the latest version of AKS, the 1.23, where this script will fail. And there are actually, I think it's documented, but I'm going to blog about it as well. But it's pretty much creating brackets around this. So I'm just copying and pasting the fix right here to save so I can deploy later in my build. So let's build that image. This takes a bit, so thankfully I can speed it up for you. But on the back end, it's creating the image in my container so I can deploy as many times as I want. We are successful. That is good. Continue. And now we can select our cluster. I created a new one called Please Work. Again, I was having some fun and issues. And it'll validate that we can connect to the cluster. Secret stores for your any passwords. And if you have an Azure file share, you can connect that. And your deployment config is your YAML file. So you can configure here if you want, the map network, how many replicas, do you want an internal balancer? I just went with the defaults. And we're gonna keep on trucking. And now we can deploy our container, which is pretty exciting. It's gonna use that image out of ACR, it's gonna use that YAML file, and we're gonna deploy to that AKS cluster. I sped it up, and as you can see, I don't have enough nodes for my pod. So because I deployed earlier, it needs to spin up another node for my pod. So it gets beyond that issue, and now it's container creating. And we'll speed it up because it's trying to load up a new VM. And now we've deployed the pod to our new node. And so I'm going to hit this URL because, it's always a fancy IIS website that you must see to see if it's working. Go ahead and copy and bring it up. And now our IS website is running in a container in Azure. That's really how easy it is. I never played with containers before until I did the talk at Ignite, and I've always been more of a virtualization side person. But this makes logical sense for apps that you can containerize. Why run it on a VM when you can run it in a container? There's more to it with Kubernetes on the back end. So that's why we offer Azure Kubernetes Service, so you don't have to worry about the management portion. You can just deploy your containers at will. I wanted to quickly jump back to the portal to visually show you what happened. If I go to Kubernetes Service, I can find my AKS cluster, please work. And here's a quick overview, the Kubernetes version, what resource group it's in, which location. I have 2 node pools because the default is Linux, and then I added a Windows Server pool to run my Windows nodes. And then what's really cool, if I go back to overview and click connect, it gives you the commands to run, the kubectl commands, or kubectl as I like to say, but people get upset about that. Not really, but maybe. So you can copy the command and open Cloud Shell and then connect, and it copied and pasted for me already. Wow. And as those command, or as that, the backend was running, I could have run a kubectl get pods to see them spinning up, and see everything going on in the backend. You can put a watch flag on, which we go over again, and I'm not plugging Ignite, but Vinicius did a good, he did some great demos, and you can add a watch flag in the Azure Cloud Shell to keep watching what's happening and see your pods creating if they weren't being able to be scheduled like before. So it's fun to see on the back end as while you're deploying. And let's wrap this up. So we're back. I hope you enjoyed that little demo of using the Azure Migrate containerization tool. And I actually said it right. It's not that hard, and it's a good way to get started with migration into Azure, or even just using containers. So you can always go on GitHub. There's a lot of repos to play around with, and also Microsoft Learn online. We love having people use that to ask questions and learn with us and provide feedback. So thanks again for having me, and have a happy holiday and a happy new year.